Pirate Kings, Pirate Queens, non-binary monarchs of the sea, hello, how's it going? What's going on? It's time for us to get into another deck in our countdown to OP07. If you haven't had a chance to see the Perona video I posted, go check that out. Very fun deck, highly recommend you try it out. And if you're new to the channel, here is a breakdown of my process for these videos. I have gone through OnePieceTopDecks.com, SecondStorage.com, and Firefist.gg to log every single deck list that either won or topped a tournament in the Asian version of the Set 7 format, put them all into a giant spreadsheet, and assigned each list a point value based on the scale of competition of that tournament, the deck's placing in the tournament, and how far into the format that tournament took place. With that, I've been able to rank each leader as well as come up with a standard topping deck list for that leader, along with some very useful metrics on cost curve, amount of counter, number of 2K counters, non-counter characters, blockers, events, cards with a certain type even, as well as some tech choices and general popularity of cards that got used with each leader. I've also been reading a fair amount of Japanese articles from Note.com and doing some of my own testing to get further insight into these decks and why players made the choices they did, all for the purpose of getting us as ready as we can be for this set once it comes out over here. So thank you again for coming along, welcome to Sakura Kingdom, and let's get into the countdown to OP07. Our number 6 deck is a player favorite from Set 6, Gecko MORIA. I've always loved Graveyard Shenanigans. I love how well-designed, how mid-rangey, how versatile this leader is. But with Black Yellow Luffy rising in popularity and KO resistance having more value post-ban, he does have a bit more of an uphill battle than he did before. He doesn't really have a ton of focused support in this new set, and the loss of Great Eruption does hurt a bit, but some new inclusions can help him stay relevant. Of course we're playing for Suru, Black Staple. Without Great Eruption, she is our cheapest cost reducer, so she comes in handy. Full playset of Sindri to fill our trash, and as a 2K counter we can retrieve with Hogback if we need to. Access to and recursion of our resources is even more important post-ban than it was in Set 6. A playset of Brand New is going to be pretty necessary. He still picks up some of our best cards, especially since these new inclusions we have to adapt to the OP07 meta are Navy type, and even if you whiff on him, he still fills your trash either way. Since we're going to be playing Sindri pretty often, and Suru a little more than we did before, Tashigi comes in handy as a 13th 2K counter, even if we don't end up finding much use for her otherwise. Hina came in handy pretty often during OP06, especially at 6 or 7 Don to combine with Absalom off the leader ability, but she's even more necessary for reduction post-ban. The thing to keep in mind though is that Moria's never been strictly a control deck, and we're going to lean even further into that aggro direction of slamming a barrage of 5Ks when we want to deplete our opponent's hand, so her stat line is just as important as that cost reduction. And then we've got Rebecca, one of the best cards ever printed in black. She was pretty here or there in Set 6, but in Set 7 she was played almost all the time. Never at 4 though. The list is just a little tight with our new additions, and she's also removed very easily by Law's Leader effect, any 2 cost reduction versus black, and by that new Egghead Luffy in yellow decks. But she's still worth using because she can recur our resources, especially our 2K counters, either when you play her at 7 with that Hina combo, or off of Moria, but she's not obligatory to include. There is room to cut her if there's something you really need to find space for. Since reviving Thriller Bark characters is this deck's whole shtick, Absalom, all those other Thriller Bark 4 costs are still at a full 4 of. Even though we're not KOing left and right, he's still very important for keeping our tempo up. But against blue decks, and especially against Law, you want to be careful about timing him right. Tuck your only copy, that can be pretty painful. Borsellino's relevant again, and he is still a great blocker who can tax our opponent's attacks, and helps us out in pretty much any matchup except for Law. And once again, with the control aspect slightly hampered, the resource difference that Moria creates is more important than ever, so Hogback can either facilitate Moria plays when you need a copy, or loop your Sindri or your Perona to stay alive, especially versus Law with all of their swings. Kuzan's always going to warrant a response from our opponent, whether we play him from hand or off of our 8-cost Moria. Since he replaces himself, that's absolutely fine. don't even assume you'll get to use his -4 effect. Just take the free card and run with it. 2 copies will be plenty since we want to use our Thriller Bar characters as much as possible as we progress through the mid-game, and because he doesn't have counter. Perona is the key to adapting against what's most likely our worst matchup, Black Yellow Luffy. As often as possible, we want to be ripping cards out of their hand. That way we can shorten that time frame when they can easily pump their leader up to 9k and just counter out of any swing we throw at them. And even though the opponent does get to choose which card they discard, our aim is just to reduce the number of cards in their hand. Either way, it cuts down their resources and gets us closer to being able to close that game out. And then the 5-cost Sabo lets us circumvent Lucci's control strategy and stay alive versus Luffy as he keeps hitting us for 11k in the late game. Plus, we can grab him from our trash off of Rebecca, get blockers out, keep that wall up, keep our KO immunity on, and the draw 2 trash 2 is perfectly in line with our game plan, so what's not to like? Everything so far has been pretty familiar. I didn't want to spend too much time on that, but now I get into a couple new cards. That Sakazuki from set 2 is finally seeing play. There are a lot of 5-cost characters that we just don't want to deal with in this format. Particularly the Yellow Luffy and the 5-drop Purple Kid, but also Cavendish, even Gadatsu, so he takes care of those pretty cleanly. Plus, if we combine him with Hina, we can KO a 9-drop. If we use either Hina or Perona and Suru, we can get a 10-drop. Again, control is not the main strategy here, it's not our only tool, but it is a significant one, even without Eruption. The 7k stat line is also really useful because, 1, it's the magic number to get 2 cards out of our opponent's hand, but against Law, they have to use 2 reducers if they want to tuck him. And we're only spending 6 to play him, so this dude might be a pencil pusher now, but he's good at his job, he's not costing us a lot, I'ma roll with it. And 8-cost Moria is still the MVP of black decks. What else can I say about the guy? We can go Kuzan Branu to get more resources. We can set up blockers. We can potentially get that last KO we need to stay alive. And 9k is exactly what we need to whittle Luffy's hand down. And I wrote this last part before we got the set 9 Teach Leader reveal, but until this card is either restricted, we get rotation, or if Teach just completely shuts him down, he's going to keep this deck alive in some capacity. And our final card is the true MVP against Luffy, and against Yellow in general, Isho. Ripping 2 cards from hand at random can make a world of difference in outlasting Luffy in particular, but any deck that hoards cards. And his blanket -3 to cost makes Absalom much more effective. With this effect and Hina, Absalom can drop a 9 cost. He doesn't help us quite as much against Law since they already have a lower hand size and their characters don't require as much reach to KO. So I very much recommend tailoring his counts as well as Sakazuki's to match whatever meta you're going to be playing in. Heading into our card counts, we will see that every single list considered was playing a full set of Suru, Branu, Hogback, Perona, Absalom, and the 8-cost Moria. Sabo and Isho were also present in every list, most playing a full set of Sabo, and 2 to 3 Isho depending. Hina and Borsalino were very popular. I'm surprised to see Sindri at 85 and that many lists playing her at 3 or 2. I was expecting full 4 counts. Interestingly, there were some players who were working with a full 4 copies of Dashigi. It looks like those lists were still trying to salvage the control direction as much as they could. There might be some value there. One of them did have 15 2Ks in total, so keep that in mind. Kuzan and Becky in 3/4 of the lists, pretty solid at 2 or 3 of. And Helmeppo was in a majority of lists, but not successful enough to make it into this one. He was mostly played in the earlier part of the post-ban format, people were still figuring out what would make the deck still work, and his popularity very much dropped after the first couple weeks. And one card that has been noticeably absent from our data list is Lucci. He was in 38% of these lists, more than a third, so there can be an argument to be made for him, but clearly most of these players did not need him to succeed with Moria. And I see this as indicative of the direction that Moria has to go in to succeed without Eruption. Double KOs will not come as easily as they used to. I suppose against Law you could go Helmeppo on 1/4 cost, Suru on another. Ice Age can also help you in that regard. I'd say just be careful with the amount of counter if you're going to play Lucci. Cerberus could also be a pretty nice, cheap way to get around Black Yellow Luffy's 11k swings, Maybe against something like the 9-cost Zoro and Bonnie, but there's always the risk of them resting us with an Apu. And there's that Sakazuki. Only in 31% of these decks, but those decks were two of the most recent wins that Moria had, and one of them actually won the Indonesia Championship. Somebody ran set 2 Sengoku at the very end of the format. I guess maybe you put 2 on him, swing into one of Law's rested characters, -2 to something else, and then you go Moria, Absalom, Branu. This is interesting. It was only 1 copy. I guess I'm just surprised it's not Tashigi. Interesting. And then Brook was also in one of those more control-oriented builds. I can see him helping Lucci out quite a bit. And then early on in the format, someone used T-Bone as their extra 2k of choice. I'll never criticize that. He's a great guy. Love to see him. The 10 easiest cuts, according to the data, are our 4th Hina, both Sakazukis, the 3rd Isho, our 4th Sindri, very interesting to me, the 2 Kuzan, 2nd Becky, the 4th Porcelino, and then actually the 1st Rebecca as well. Potential additions, we could bump Sokka up to 3, we could add a 2nd Tashigi, add both Cerberus, add a Helmeppo, 3rd Kuzan, a 4th Isho, actually, a 4th Kuzan, or an Ice Age. Moria is in a very interesting spot right now. I think he's going to require a lot of testing, a lot of matchup knowledge, a lot of trial and error with the deck building, but it's been shown that he can still do well. And I'm not at liberty to share the specific matchup rates that I've gotten from OP Bounty, one of the amazing ranked sim options we have. Highly recommend it. Actually, quick plug, their Patreon's only $5 a month, and you get all the data. It's everything I've ever wanted. But from their matchup data, it's a small piece of the pie overall, still over 1,000 games. I think it's a small group of very, very dedicated Moria players, but just matchup rate to matchup rate, his spread looks very good for those players. So do I think he is necessarily going to be the dark horse best deck in format of set 7 post-ban once that comes around to us this week? Not necessarily. But I do think that with the time, with the knowledge, you can still do very well with this deck. And that's set 7 Gecko Moria. As always, I hope you've enjoyed. If you did, I would be ever so grateful if you left a like, shared your own thoughts down below, share it with a friend who wants to see how Moria can do in set 7. And if you want to get notified as soon as I post the rest of these videos and that big one on release day, please subscribe. Again, any bit of support helps, and I'm always appreciative. But stay tuned for the rest. I am Sakura Kingdom. I'm gonna... I kind of don't feel like doing much. Yeah, I'm just gonna be lazy. More videos? I'll get someone else to do them for me. Maybe a zombie army. Alright, I'll see you for the next one. Bye.